You are listening to episode 79 with Back to Here with Sarita, the new Manifesting Paradigm podcast. This particular episode is really, really radiant, and I'm reflecting on a conversation that I feel deeply aligns with this year's theme, the embodied manifester. My guest, Elizabeth Munoz, and I explore the connection between nervous system healing, body-based manifestation, burnout, and the journey of returning home to yourself. This conversation really opens up what becomes possible when we stop leading from performance and start leading from an embodied state. Miss Elizabeth Munoz is the founder of Soulhaven and the visionary behind the Radiance CEO movement, which is a new model of feminine leadership rooted in nervous system regulation and sustainable growth. After losing her corporate career to burnout, she rebuilt her life and business from a regulated baseline rather than urgency. That personal shift changed and reshaped everything. She now teaches female entrepreneurs how to scale without self-abandonment, blending embodiment leadership, nervous system science, and conscious technology. Her personal work helps women build businesses that expand their impact without costing them their health. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll see you in there. Hey there, I'm Sarita, and you're about to experience the modern approach to well-being where you get to establish the best and most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. I'm on a mission to help you declutter energy and reclaim your power so you can be a magnet to what you desire. If you're looking for the optimal blend of mindset and healing, you're in the right place. My goal in this podcast is to share tools, resources, and practices that will help you along your healing journey. I'm so excited to be here with you today, so welcome to Back to Here with Sarita. Let's get started. Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Here with Sarita, the new Manifesting Paradigm podcast. I got my second guest for the year, Miss Elizabeth Munoz. She is the Radiance CEO, and I absolutely love that. And as you know, this is the year where I'm talking about embodiment. So let's go ahead and jump in. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here with me today and finding me on this podcast as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
We were just talking about some things that have come into fruition into our lives recently and how it sometimes does feel like magic. But before we get into all the meat and potatoes of the episode, I want you to introduce yourself. But before, instead of asking the very generic question, like what brought you here today, one of the things that I was reflecting on is if you can share with the listeners, what particular problem or event or circumstance were you in at the time, to essentially solve a life problem that has brought you into the work that you are doing now?
Ooh, that is really good. So that's kind of loaded because I don't know
Yes.
that it was necessarily one. There's multiple things that transpired. I was in corporate. I grew up in a very patriarchal household. And so being in corporate was like a big accomplishment and win for me. It was one of those things where the cycle just kept perpetuating because in my household, I was always having to prove and perform in order to feel like I was worthy of my father's love. And in my house, it was women were meant to be seen and not heard. And everything was about performance. And so the only way that I ever felt like I received love from him was by doing my best, graduating, getting my degree in psychology, then moving on and getting the big corporate job. And so every step that I took was getting me close, I thought, to receiving his validation. And that followed me into my career. And so when I went into corporate, it was all about performing and proving. And my career excelled very quickly. But on the outside, it's like I was super functional. I was doing all the things. I was really successful at sales. I had the sales leadership roles. I was climbing that corporate ladder. And inside, I felt like I was empty. It was hollow. I didn't feel that I was connected. And another big thing that I didn't realize was that I had been neurodivergent pretty much my whole life. And so I had ADHD, I had dyslexia, and I didn't know that. And so getting diagnosed as an adult and then putting me on all these medications, and then my mom got cancer. So from there, it was really bad. And then my mom's sister died from cancer right around the time that my mom was sick
Wow.
with cancer. And so it was just like these things were just one thing after the other. And I was in a really toxic relationship. And I didn't really, even though I was excelling, I didn't feel like I had self-worth. and I didn't truly love myself. Ultimately, I was literally on the hospital bed getting an emergency C-section because my cervix ruptured. I'm bleeding out. I don't know if I'm going to survive, if my baby's going to survive, and I'm taking sales calls. And
Oh,
I'm
wow.
literally my clients telling them like, "Hey, I'm in the hospital." And they're like, "Why are you calling us?" But I didn't feel at that time that I could call anybody. And we talked about this before about like sisterhood and how important it is, right? I feel like we've been conditioned to think that we need to do it by ourselves, and that's not the case, right? And that's, if anything, the biggest message, the biggest takeaway is we are meant to heal and thrive, not just survive together in sisterhood and community. And so being able to lean on like energied women, right? And so ultimately, I wish I could say that that moment was that pivotal moment that really triggered me to kind of leave, but it wasn't. I ended up getting pregnant with my fourth child, which was my daughter. And then again, had an emergency C-section, got really sick, and was forced. Like I was walking through the airport and my legs gave out on me. I got excruciating pain. They diagnosed me with fibromyalgia because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I ended up going on disability. And for me, that was huge. But that was the beginning of me doing the self exploration and really doing the work to find myself, to heal myself, to reconnect back home, and ultimately realize that I was missing sisterhood and I needed that. And from there, starting to build up the community, and then here we are today. And so that was what really led me to do all the research on the nervous system and understanding the way that it works and getting all my certifications. And at the root of everything, when we open up that lotus and we peel back the layers, at the core of that is our nervous system, and that needs to be regulated in order for us to magnetize and be able to do anything that we want to do with our lives.
I fully agree. That sounds so familiar. Like your story in regards to the performance piece or aspect is so familiar. And I'm sure people listening, especially women listening, this is something that's so ingrained in our psyche that like we're not seen unless we're in a performance type of role. Starting at such a young age, and I'm just relating myself to your story in the way that like I feel like I got validation and was seen and was praised when I was in a kind of a performative type of role, getting good grades in school if I was actually performing, because I used to do a lot of dance when I was younger. I did ballet folklorico a lot, and I got praised so much. I was like, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Wow, you're so radiant." And then as I stepped into corporate life, it was almost the same thing where it was like if I was speaking up, if I was acting as if I was like one of the men at the table, right? Like talking and being in this empowered state and dressing the part, and it felt good at the time because I feel like this is a piece in which we forget about that is part of our identity piece that is so important that we should not get from outside sources. I mean, and it felt
Yes.
validating and it felt good because I hadn't discovered that within myself. I hadn't
Mm,
figured that out within myself. And it sounds like that's the journey that you took as well, is figuring out after a lot of different, events that have occurred to you, like finally coming to the conclusion, I don't need to be looking outside of myself for the validation and the pieces I'm looking for. Like it needs to come internally from that. So,
yeah.
when it comes to that aspect, like where do we even like where do we even start in that? Because you talked about the nervous system a little bit. So let's kind of dive into like what that actually means, especially when it comes to like words that we hear like validation and performance and things like that. What are some of the pieces that we feel like that are fragmented within us that happen when we are looking outside of ourselves for this approval?
Yeah. So, I get asked this all the time when it comes to like burnout, for example, right? The difference between a neurotypical burnout and a neurodivergent burnout. And so, understanding when it's a neurotypical burnout, the way that that kind of looks is you're performing maybe you work really hard and you have some big, events coming up or some big quotas coming up. And so you push through, you hit that end and you're like, now you're exhausted. So you take a couple days, you reset, maybe take a vacation, go off for a weekend, you come back and you're like, yeah, I'm ready to go, right? That's neurotypical burnout. With neurodivergent burnout, which is most women, we go through that, is it's deep rooted. And so it's almost this feeling that no matter what you do, it's not enough. And on the outside, externally, what you're saying to people or what you're portraying may look like you have it all together. But inside, what are you really telling yourself and how does it feel in your body? And neurodivergent burnout can literally last it can last weeks, months, years. I realized that I was literally in burnout for like 8 years and I was oscillating these cycles. And I didn't even know what it was to be out of it until I was truly out of it. And I was like, oh my God, I have clarity. I can actually take a break. I can push to the point where, okay, now I have that awareness where, if example, you're sitting at your computer and you're working and then you keep hitting a wall, like nothing's coming through for you. In your typical performance, you're just going to keep pushing no matter what. You reach that point of exhaustion, frustration, you're angry at the world, maybe your kids, your spouse, your loved ones. You're just on edge. And the worst part is, for me at least, I would be super kind to my coworkers and to my clients, and then I'm like yelling at my kids, I'm angry with my husband, and it's not even their fault, right? But they're the safe. So it's like I
Right.
can get away with it with them. And it's sad because we don't even realize that even with our kids sometimes, like they take things out on us because they're safe with us, right? And so it's that understanding with ourselves that we do the same thing. And when you start to really come home to your body, and it's about taking small aligned actions and awareness, because when you're little, you know exactly what you want, right? You cry because you're hungry, or you cry because you need attention, or you cry because you're wet, or whatever it may be. And you cry louder and louder so someone gives you attention and they give you what you need. But what happens is, as we age, especially as women, I feel we start to disconnect from that because we put other needs ahead of our own. And that's just how society has programmed us, right? And so what happens is you start to disconnect from your body and you start to ignore the signs. And when your body is sending you a message saying, hey, I've had enough, hey, I'm exhausted, you push through it. And so there is something there that when you start to rebuild those connections, you start to realize, okay, I have awareness now. So is it that the edge is a good thing because I'm at the edge, because I'm at the edge of expansion, right? Because that's where true transformation happens, is when you're at the edge and you step over that edge into the unknown. But when your nervous system is so programmed and so fried, almost burned out, what happens is you hit that edge of expansion and then it scares you into coming back into the known, even if the known is crappy, unsafe, dysregulated, unhealthy. It could be a relationship, it could be a job, whatever it may be. You still would rather be in the known than the unknown. And so when you start to rebuild that awareness, and it's just taking those tiny moments. One example is, have you ever seen a dog that is in a kennel and they're in the kennel
Mm-hmm.
all night? And when you let them out in the morning, the first thing that animal does is stretch. Before they do anything else, they stretch. A baby, when they first wake up, the first thing they do is stretch and move their bodies. And yet, as adults, what do we do when we get out of bed? We roll out of bed and we
We
get
like,
going. Yeah. That's the first sign of
or
disconnection
we
from your
pick up
body.
our phone, or we
Yeah.
pick up our phone and yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, so,
get
like, those are
distracted.
little signs that we are disconnected from our body, because the very first thing that you should do when you get up in the morning is stretch, because you have been laying all day, and so you need to feel into your body, feel where it's stiff, where it's tight, and put movement in it, get the blood flowing. And so just those little shifts that we can make start to reconnect us, and from there, we start to get awareness, and we start to see, is this performance or is it me giving me what I need?
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I meant to preface this as the embodiment era that I'm in. So that's why I'm attracting people into my podcast and into my world that I'm less interested in learning and sharing about the knowledge based information versus what we can learn from our body, right? Because, like you mentioned, we are very disconnected to it. That's part of the piece that you were just sharing, is that we weren't taught from a young age to be associated with the body. So we're very disassociated from it. As you're sharing from like an animal type of perspective, a dog and even a baby who isn't evolved as a full grown human, it's still kind of more in the instinctual phase. They're
Mhm.
connected to their body because they haven't been conditioned to learn otherwise yet. So
Yeah.
I think this is so important because we, like you said, as women, we have not been taught this way. And so what I'm hearing is the surface level result is we are attempting to get validation, and we're also doing this performative as a result of the disconnect, as a result of not being in these little micro actions. And I appreciate you bringing up the neurodivergent aspect to it because that's not everybody's story, but it is yours. And thank you so much for bringing that part to this episode. When it comes to like mainstream advice, because we're talking about the nervous system, and the nervous system is, I feel like, is such an overused word, right? What is an area in which that you feel like is very mainstream, but not really getting into more of like the deep aspect? What's coming to mind when it comes to being disconnected? And then also like from the perspective of being a female, from a perspective of being a woman, and these like conditioning things that we are taught. There is so much there. Because this podcast is about manifestation, right? So it's about
Yeah.
attraction and it's about the frequency level and the vibration that we are in. Yeah. So whatever's coming to mind for you when we're talking about this.
I think that to your point, it is a very overused phrase. And there's a lot there that is misunderstood. And when we are talking about the nervous system, you'll hear just like the guidance of listening to your mind, for example. And the mind is the one that's controlling the body. And with everything that I've learned, so I'm certified through the Heart Math Institute for heart mind coherence. And then I have my different certifications in psychology, and I've done a lot of extensive research with sound frequencies and the way that brain entrainment and the way that we move through like theta and gamma and beta frequencies, and so how we can entrain our brains. And you hear like The Secret, for example, and that was a big, buzz and hype. And when you really look at The Secret, what it's missing is that is a lot of like there's not a lot of emotion in it. And what we're learning now is
Absolutely.
that our heart has a brain and we actually instinctually lead with our emotions. And so it's really when you first encounter an experience, there's an emotional response, and then your mind it validates. So it's your mind starts to look for validation for that emotion, whatever that emotion may be. And so really having that awareness and being able to connect your heart to your mind, that is where you start to regulate. And so that is where you hear about the vagus nerve. And there's a lot of like technology out there where it's like stimulate the vagus nerve. But in order to do that, you have to actually be able to connect your heart and your mind. And then like you have humming or certain movements or certain stimulation, rocking, swaying that allows you to stimulate and get your entire kind of like nervous system on board. And so understanding that we need to work as a cohesive unit. I hear a lot of people say, like, oh, my body is fighting against me. No, your body is not. Like, your body wants, you're fighting against your body. Like, typically, your body is telling you what you're doing wrong and you're not listening to it. And so, when you start to listen to your body, and that's when you start to heal your body. But in order to do that, you have to start having that awareness and really being able to ground into your heart and your mind, and then knowing that your entire nervous system operates as like its own little solar system. And so whatever you put in is what you're going to get out.
Absolutely. The heart has a brain. That is chef's kiss right there. It really is. It doesn't get any more clear than that. Your comment about The Secret and the law of attraction and manifestation. This is my personal beef, is that it is so mind oriented. When I scroll on TikTok, when I go on YouTube, when I read books, there is very little information out there. There's very few people actually speaking. And thank goodness, like you're speaking on this as well, around the aspect of body based manifesting. And I definitely feel that we are doing a disservice, especially for us people who are, I would say, underrepresented. That's the word I like using, underrepresented. If that is being a woman, if that is being a person of color, whatever that may be. But as we know from your personal experience, from my experience, we just have different stories and beliefs and conditionings that we work through as being a woman versus a white cisgender man, right? Just no matter
Right.
what upbringing, right? We just have a different conditioning. We've had a different way that we've navigated life. We have different experiences, right? Our filter is different than somebody else. And same thing when we add multiple layers of ethnicity and race and, all these different things that just are part of this identity structure that we have in our society. And I feel like with the manifestation talk that is so mainstream and the nervous system talk, it really is doing a disservice to people that really do need to have or want to have or crave this sense of body-based knowledge, right? And like you said, our body is the is the ancient wisdom, really, because before technology, before like all these like different educational programs and certifications, what did our ancestors use? Really, they used the sun, moon, stars, and the body. Really, essentially, that's what they did.
Yeah. Yeah. And even further with that, you think about, when the men they went off to go hunt, right? And the women would stay behind and they would care for the village and they would care for the children and they would dance and they would sing and they would chant. And that's how they got their therapy. They would dance on the earth barefoot.
Yes.
And so when you think about that, there was no like medication and there was no, oh, we need a psychiatrist. And not to say there's anything wrong if you need a psychiatrist, but that's not how we healed in the past. That's not how we rose.
Correct.
We gathered and we communed and we had sacred sisterhood and so we were very embodied.
Yes. Yes. So true. So we've kind of rolled from the performance piece at the part where it's the surface layer, right, of what may happen. And again, that's just a particular manifestation of what may be happening internally, right? There's a lot of different people pleaser, like these are all surface level kind of results of the piece of very simply the disconnection from the body and not feeling that. If somebody was washing the dishes and going through their day listening to this episode, what are some things that you would lead them through in regards to helping them support in those moments for connection to the body, apart from the stretching example that you used earlier?
Yeah, I like to have a list of the things that I know that make me feel good. It's about having a toolkit, right? Because not one size fits all, and not
Right.
one size fits all in every moment. So, having different things that you can do, whether that be different feeling into, tapping, different, like I always have different essential oils with me because this is the senses, right? And so that brings you into your
Hmm.
body as well. And so realizing, hey, let me try different scents and see which ones like heighten me and make me feel pleasure. And so then you know that you have those. So in the moment, like I carry certain scents when I go to the airport, always non-negotiable. So that if I start to get that high stress, it's like I smell that. And what these are, and I want to make it clear because they're triggers. So when we have certain bracelets, like I have this snake bracelet that I wear, and it's just to remind me of our Kundalini energy, right? And so it's
Beautiful.
really about having these different triggers, but they bring us into our body and they bring us into the moment. And even with like washing the dishes, something that is like maybe not a favorite thing to do, we can make that a pleasurable moment. If instead of like in that moment, you're like, oh God, I hate washing dishes. Instead, it's like, oh, let me feel into it. How does the soap feel on my hands? Like, how does my body feel as I'm standing here? Let me be mindful. And so you start to bring yourself back into the moment. And instead of thinking of everything else that you should be doing or could be doing, just be in that moment and be one with what you're doing. And so trying to practice that more often than not. And really it's almost like surrendering into your body. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would say it is that surrender. This is actually in my workshops and my retreats the hardest exercise that women experience, and I would even say boys, because my son, he's 14 and I have him do it and he struggles with it, is looking in the mirror, making eye contact and saying, I love you. Because we are so used to looking in the mirror and criticizing ourselves. And so once you can get comfortable with saying, I love you, you are enough. You've always been enough. You will always be enough. It's like you are perfect the way you are. And then from there, I hear so many people say that no one's perfect. And I would beg to differ that we are all perfect because in whose eyes are we not perfect? We may not take perfect action, but even if we are born with one arm, that's how the creator created us. So that means that we are perfect and in essence, right? And so when you start to shift the way that you talk to yourself, and I even have those moments where I'm like, oh, I'm getting, cellulite or wrinkles or whatever. And then it's like, then I'll walk away from the mirror and I'll go back and be like, you're a badass. Like you had 4 kids. If you've done that, like, I love you, body. And so once you can actually get comfortable with that, then it's bringing the emotion into it because that's where the magic
Mm.
happens. So what I like to say is like, have 2 to 3 memories that are pure, just pure joy, pure compassion, pure love, like those moments where like for me, and this is a little bit selfish, but I had 3 boys, and then I had my daughter, and I had my daughter and I was older, and so when I had my daughter, they did all the genetic testing, and at 3 months, they called me and they're like, "Hey, we have the results for your genetic test, and we also know what the sex is. Do you wanna know?" I was like, "Yes, I do." And they're like, "You're having a girl." And I was like, right? I was so
Finally.
I know. And but it's
Yeah.
like that moment for me was just pure joy. Like
Ecstatic.
I cried, I was
Mhm.
so happy. So that's one of the memories that I can latch onto that doesn't have anything like bad that happened after or whatever. And so when you tap into that memory and then you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, now you're actually tapping into a genuine emotion and then you're confirming it. And so that starts to rebuild that bond and that connection with yourself and that self love. And I think that that is one of the hardest and yet easiest things that we can do to rebuild that connection and start to feel into our emotions and our bodies again. And just doing that will change your life, truly.
So true. Those anchoring examples are so, so beautiful. Thank you for that, that we can bring ourselves back to our center, back to here, as the name of this podcast, back to here, with like just apart from the visual, like actually having things we're smelling or hearing. And yes, the love gazing, where you look in the mirror and you look at yourself and you like make eye contact. My coach at the time was like, I invite you not just to do that, but do it naked. And I was like, yikes, like that's just, that seems like a big challenge, but I ended up doing it and it's now part of my practice as for some people as unusual that can be, like it's something that has been so important to me when it comes to my self-love practices. When I do my dance therapy for myself, like I do dancing on my own and just light a candle and I make it very intentional. Dance has been such a part of my background. And as you said, like that's what our ancestors used to do, right? And still do. I mean, there are places that you go in this world where they still are practicing dancing and chanting. Like that's part of the ancestral wisdom that is brought forward into today's culture. And I have, when I don't have it, it usually is a little bit more challenging, but I have opted to have a mirror in front of me. So when I am dancing, I can actually see myself and interact with myself. And so it's a spiritual embodiment practice that I do for the self. And then this is the first time I'm actually sharing this. I've been meaning to share this in an episode saying that I do this, but it really has helped me with so many different things. I'm feeling safe and at home within myself, especially like the movement aspect. And then also taking it really slow and understanding that I don't have to be constantly moving fast. I'm an double Aries, so I'm constantly, and I'm short. I'm only like 5 foot. So I'm like constantly like going really quickly sometimes, especially when I'm trying to go places. Like it's really nice to be very intentional about like what you're saying, slowing down when you're the example when you're in the airport and like there's so many different energies happening around you, just coming back to that focal point that'll help support you in like those moments. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And, you know, our breath. There's so many different types of breath work, but breath work is magical. There's actually a study that I read that talked about like smoking cigarettes and for women and how like women originally picked up smoking when the fad first came out. And it was not the actual nicotine that they believed that was the addiction. It was the breath work because women weren't getting those breaks.
Fascinating.
Yeah, women weren't getting those breaks to take those deep breaths. And so when you pick up smoking, right, you right? And so it's like you're literally and then you're taking that time for yourself, you're stepping away
Mm,
and so real when you start to like understand that dynamic, it's like, yeah, because breath work is so powerful. And just even doing some people say that box breathing gives them a little anxiety if they're not used to it. So box breathing is like you breathe in for 5, you hold for 5, breathe out for 5, hold for 5 on empty. And so it's like, then do 3. Do what feels comfortable for you, right? Or you can do a breath of 5 in, then 5 out, 5 in, 5 out. And with heart mind coherence, what you start to learn is like the coherent breath. And so what you start to practice is breathing and imagining that you're breathing in from your heart and you're breathing out from your heart. You're breathing in and you're breathing out. And so it starts to connect you with your heart and that reconnection. But this is something that you can literally do when you're laying in bed when you first get up in the morning. Like take a couple rounds and do some breath work and then get up and stretch, or get up and stretch and then do some breath work and feel into your body. And it doesn't have to be prolonged, but that shift in itself makes all the difference. Or if you're going into a situation that maybe is a little bit high anxiety for you, taking a moment to pause and breathe really deeply can shift that and bring you back in your body and get you out of your head. And so just understanding that, like, we have all the tools. I like to use technology because that's my jam. We don't need anything but what we have. Nature, Mother Nature has given us everything that we need. And so it's understanding that we have these powers, to your point, and we have this ancient women. And so tapping into that, it makes all the difference in the world.
Agreed. Fascinating about the smoking. And that just actually reminds me, I remember having a dialogue with my sister. She's younger than me and she's a smoker and she's been a smoker for a while. And I remember asking her a few years back about the smoking. And she's like, the reason I do it is because I don't really have anything for myself. And so it allows me to just have a couple moments for self. And I'm like, interesting. We are, and I've said this before, we are such shallow breathers. Like when we are going throughout our day, I notice that. I'm mindful of that now because I wasn't aware of that. It's mindfulness is just bringing things to awareness. For me, I didn't realize how much of a shallow breather I was until I started doing meditation. And then I took it to another level and started doing breath work. So that totally makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing the very unique anchor tools that we can anchor into bodily senses. I've shared my own journey with that with the dancing. Let's talk about what can actually happen. So I've noticed with doing, because I realized through my journey, it was like I was doing this deep healing to get safe in my body again. Then I started with like the manifestation work and the attraction work and speaking things into existence, changing my underlying frequency, right? Because that's really important when it comes to nervous system work and how we actually are able to literally speak things into existence. And so what's happening with me in my current state is that I'm kind of I call it this capacity gap where it's like kind of one of two ways where either you are experiencing things in your 3D reality that are happening and your nervous system hasn't fully caught up with what's happening and then your 3D hasn't really caught up with you. Mine is the first where I'm in like these things are happening wonderfully and I'm like so excited and then like my identity work that I've been doing, there's still that kind of fragment of me being like, is this really happening to me right now? Like, is this really true? Is this like life right now? I used to be waiting for the other shoe to drop or feeling like it's not real, but there's still kind of that sense, you know what I mean? So, yeah, if you can speak into that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm gonna maybe phrase it a little bit differently, because I'm of the belief that if all these amazing things are happening, your nervous system is already caught up. Your nervous system, because for it to happen, your nervous system has to be feel safe enough to receive.
Makes
So
sense.
so now what I will talk about is as human beings, we are the highest level of evolution, right? And we're created in such a way that there is no we're boundless, right? And the limits that we place on ourselves are our own limitations that we've created based on societal conditioning, generational conditioning, whatever it may be. But we have these two very magical things. Like we have the ability, we're the only species that has the ability to have imagination and that's the future, right? And then we have memory, like true memory, and that is the past. And so, what a lot of us are often doing is oscillating between the past and the future. So, we're taking either past worries, past anxieties, and then we're projecting them into the future. And so, you're
Makes
constantly
sense.
living in the past or the future, like, oh, because of this experience, this is what's going to happen in the future. And so that could be like a
Right.
worry, like, "Oh, the other shoe's going to drop because in the past, maybe something happened and then the shoe dropped, right? And so now it's like you're projecting what happened and you're projecting that into the future. Now, if we instead say, okay, let me take this that happened in the past, whether it was good or bad, and let me take it as a learning experience. And then how can I change or make my future situation better based on that? Now you bring that imagination into the present moment, and that's where you're embodied. And so when we can do that and we can do it with awareness and be mindful of it, then we really can be in our bodies and we really can allow for the magic to just happen and not have an expectation of what's going to happen next because we're not having that anxiety about it. It's just like, hey, based on this, I've learned this and now I'm going to live in the moment and I'm not going to think about a year from now, 2 years from now. Let me just live in the moment. The reality of the situation is, and I say this because my goddaughter was 19 years old. In 2021, she passed away in a car accident. She was living with us. She was a COVID graduate, straight A student, didn't get to go to prom. There was a lot going on, but she was working 3 jobs, trying to prove herself, prove her worth. And I had just kind of got out of corporate, and I was going through my own stuff and starting my business. And I was doing a lot of healing work at the time. And my daughter was little. And so it was, I didn't see the signs. But when you look at it from that perspective and you think about how do I carry on, like a lot of people will think, I'm not worthy of joy because, this person passed on and I'm still here. But the reality of the situation is they passed on and you're still here. So we get to live and carry on their memory and have that joy and use that. And so when I think of it from that perspective, it's like everything that I do, I think about if this were my last day on this earth, how do I want to live it? Do I want to leave things unsaid? Do I want to not live life to the fullest? Do I want to not believe that magic is possible? And so no, like I choose to believe and really embody that magic is possible, and it just shows up in so many different ways for me. Like, and to what we were talking about earlier, when you are in alignment and you really are feeling into that, I mean, the littlest things, like when I go and I'm gonna go park somewhere and I know that it's a busy place, I always will do like a 3, 2, 1 method, and then it's the baga. You put your tongue to the top of the roof of your mouth, and that's one of your energy centers, and you visualize what it is that you want. And so one of the simplest things that you can visualize is a parking spot. And I will tell
I
you that
love manifesting parking spots. That's
yeah,
the
like,
best.
every
It's the
single
best.
time. And so
It
if you
does.
can learn to trust yourself with something like that minor, then but you have to
Hmm.
really believe it, right? And your body has to believe
Right.
it. And then and I will say, like, have a parking be waiting for me or have a parking be open. And then if I get there and there's no parking, I'll literally do like a double around and a car will leave. Boom, and I'll
Yeah.
park right in front. And it's just like, ah, right. But so it's like you start with the little things and you start to realize like magic happens. And then from there, I I live in the desert in Cave Creek. I have a full-blown garden outside. Like what you see, this is all like I painted the fireplace behind me,
Oh,
like
beautiful.
this me, right? And so my whole garden outside, I always wanted a hummingbird to have a nest in my garden. And this past spring, a hummingbird built a nest in my garden.
Wow.
And I was just like, "Oh my god, like that's what happens when you co-create with nature." Like if that's not
Yes.
magic, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Thank you for putting perspective into that, especially in regards to when good things are happening. And you were saying how your nervous system has already arrived, like it's already there. Like I've been doing the embodiment piece. I'm here embracing Sarita 3.0. That's what I call myself. And here I am. And so, yes, you're so right. Like these ideas and things from prior experiences that I've had are projected, right? And so it's been more of like the ego, or I should say, trying to keep me safe and just these thoughts. It's not what I believe like internally, like it's not affecting my body senses or like the way of my being, I should say. It's more like just this like thought that just creeps up, and it's ego. But me just being like, yeah, this is my life. Like my life is magic. Like I get to create and I get to co-create and I get to have these amazing things happen. Like amazing things keep happening to me. And sometimes I put them in the form of like a formation where it's just like a question, where it's like, why are great things just happening for me all the time? Or like, why did I manifest a parking spot so close to excuse me, the store that I'm going to, just like putting it in. So like the universal energies need to align with you. It's more like a question and like, all right, like this is happening, right? So thank you for getting me back to center again and realizing like it's not a problem. It's just a thought that's just been creeping up in my head, and I shouldn't give it any power by any means.
Yeah, and the ego's job, again, we go back to remember that edge conversation we were having earlier, is like that is its job is to keep us safe. I don't like the idea of separating yourself and giving like the different parts like different names and then like shunning parts of yourself, because my whole philosophy is all about reclaiming your radiance, and it's a remembrance. Like it's not something that we
Right.
learn like people say, "What is my purpose?" And they're trying to discover your purpose. Your purpose is to live a life of joy and do what brings you peace and happiness. And from there, everything else gets magnetized and radiates. And so it's really about remembering who you are and returning to wholeness. And we can't do that if we start to label different parts of ourselves and give them different names. And no, it's like bring those pieces back in. It's like Humpty Dumpty, right? He fell off the wall. Now let's put all the pieces back together again. And so it's
Mhm.
about reclaiming all those parts and not shaming any of it, because every single experience that you have went through in your life, even if you feel that there's shame around it, understanding that it's the duality. Like we're here for a reason. We're here to experience life. And that's the good, bad, and the ugly. And it's like the lotus. It grows through the murkiest of muddy waters, right? Like, and it comes out this beautiful, amazing flower. And I've actually grown them, and it's really cool to see. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, it's like that's what we are. And so we shouldn't be shaming parts of ourselves, even if horrendous things have happened to us in our lives. Like those were learning experience. And now how do we transmute that and we return to wholeness, because that's where the magic happens. And so, like, example, let's talk about the magic. Like I, for so long, felt that I was in a state of burnout. I left my corporate career because I completely burned myself out. Like my body shut down and I had to come home to myself. And I've not been a saint. I've had my issues with, addictions. I've had my issues with alcoholism in my past. I had issues with, like growing up being abused. And so when I look at all those different things, and I think, these aren't things that, like, it's not that life happened to me, it's life happened around me, and it's how I choose to show up to it. So rewriting my narrative and like changing my stories. And so not being a victim, but being powerful and knowing that I can embody that and I can transmute it. And even with the death of my goddaughter, like I love her so much to this day. Like I have pictures of her everywhere. I talk about her all the time, and it's keeping her memory alive. And like even when I go on stage, I see her in the audience like dancing and singing, and it gives me that feel and that passion for life, because that's what she was full of. And so I have
Yeah.
such immense gratitude that I even got to know her for the 19 years that I did. Some people don't even get that with their children. So for me, it's like
Yeah.
having that gratitude and appreciation. But when I finally just really started to come home to myself and really trust my body again and start to listen and give it what it needed, like real, like I had always been a manifester, but then magic started to happen, like real magic. And so, like, I went to a speaking academy, and it was this first Speaker Nation in Miami. I felt that I needed to be there. I felt like I had something that was just like choking me up. I couldn't speak my truth. And so I was like, I need to go. And I went there, and out of 55 amazing speakers, I placed third.
Ooh,
And
congrats.
yes, and so I keep this on my desk
Oh
as
my
that.
gosh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. And I'm not big on trophies, but for me, it's like a symbol. It's an anchor.
Yeah.
It's a reminder
Yeah.
of what's possible when we remain embodied, right? And we stay out
Right?
of our heads and we stay in our bodies. And then I had told you earlier, I wrote down that I wanted to speak at Mind Valley U, which is this huge, huge, huge event in Estonia that they have every year.
Right.
And it's a global stage. And then I got a phone call. I've been doing all the things, everything, like taking my breaks, going outside, grounding, walking on the earth barefoot, getting sunlight, taking intentional breaks, doing intentional movement, dancing. I love dancing because we should always move emotions through our body. So whether we're sad, we're angry, we're frustrated, like don't let anything stay stuck in your body, because that's where you start to freeze and tense up. So
Agreed.
having some kind of movement, whether that's walking, whether that's running, whether that's, I'm not a runner, but if you are, then doing that, right? And
Yeah.
having small steps. So my biggest thing is like I set the timer for 7 minutes. Anybody can walk for 7 minutes. Don't move the goalposts. Turn around, come back when that 7 minute timer goes off and walk back. Or if you feel like you want to walk further, do it. But don't change the goalposts, because then that's how you start to trust and build trust with your body again. So you're like, hey, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 5 sit ups. Like it doesn't have to be a lot. something that you can do that is achievable, that you know you can commit to, and that's how you rebuild that trust. But through doing all those practices, I ended up saying like I wanted to speak at Mind Valley U, and then 3 days ago, I get the official notice that I've been invited to speak at Mind Valley U in Estonia, July 20th through August 2nd, and it's so amazing because
Congrats.
thank you so much.
That is so beautiful.
It is, and it's just like it's all about the trust and the coming home to ourselves. It's manifestation through the body, to your point. Because if I was in my head, that would have never, it wouldn't just wouldn't have happened to that extent. Small things happen when you're in your head. Big things happen when you align with your body.
Wow. Yes. Yeah, that is so true. So true. And I can speak from experience. When I was living in San Diego, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but my audience knows that I'm completely nomadic. I don't have a home base right now. I'm on a what I call a 1 year experiment. And I've been nomadic now for about, let's see, 9 months. I think my 1 year official is coming up in May of this year. And I realized while I was in San Diego, I was practicing mindset manifestation because that's what I'd been taught. And I was dabbling in with myself, not through a course, not through anybody that was teaching it. It was more just kind of like me combining the two together. I'm like, let me take my manifestation knowledge and let me take this like bodily like education that I've been learning around the nervous system. Like, let me see how I can start fusing this together. And it wasn't until I became nomadic and I had all this stuff like uprooted from me, which means like home base, like a roof over our head, the same bed that we sleep in, like the same grocery store we go to, like all these different things have been different for me. So like my necessity to be safe in the body has like amplified 10x now because I haven't like the home. My body is my home, literally. My home is my
Yeah.
body, like because I don't have a consistent home for long periods of time. So anchoring into the body has been so necessary for me. And it was because of that, the realization of those two worlds colliding and realizing body-based manifesting, I was like, there's something here. It's like, and the things that have been coming into my life now because of that, I'm just like blown away. So, yes, I fully agree. That's the way of the future, really, is our ancestral wisdom and knowledge, what our ancestors practiced, which was the bodily wisdom aspect. So, thank you so much for all that. And congratulations again for like
Yeah.
that amazing opportunity that's happening. I want to give my audience an opportunity to know any offerings that you have, how they can connect with you, how can they work with you, etc.
Yeah. So my website is soulhaven.com. And I have an ebook. It's a free gift, and I will give you the link and I'll share, but it's too much not enough. And so it's all about the return to sacred wholeness, right? And I have an accompanying journal that goes with that, but it literally walks you through the foundational things of like returning home to yourself, dissolving the paradox, the lie that we've been conditioned to believe that we're here to compete with each other, and then really just understanding what it is to feel radiant in our own bodies again. And really it's a reclamation. And for me, this is so pivotal because I believe a spotlight is meant for, one to a few people, right? But when women are radiant and we radiate from the inside out, we are not a spotlight, we are a sunrise. And understanding
Mm.
that in a sunrise there's room for everyone, right? And so let's create that sunrise together. And that is my biggest thing there. And on my socials, it's at Miss Elizabeth Munoz, and you can DM me on Instagram and LinkedIn. If anything, I would say to take away is like, remember, like you are magical, you are radiant, and that radiance is not something that you learn. It's something you remember because you were born with it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Actually, that was funny. I was going to ask you what the takeaway here is, and you read my mind. Talk about intuitive connection there. Thank you so, so, so much, Elizabeth. We'll have your contact information below. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, the experiences that you've shared with us through the active participation with your relationship with body, with your own body, and how you're sharing that out in the world. So I really appreciate you. And thank you again so much for joining me in this podcast episode. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. And as always, keep being the amazing you that you are. Take care and see you next time. Hey, love. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you adored what you heard, It would mean the world to me if you took a moment to leave a review on the platform you are listening to this episode on. By doing this, you are helping my mission to impact other women with their healing journeys. If you aren't already following me on social media, make sure to connect with me at Sarita Wellness to get your weekly dose of inspiration. I can't wait to be with you in the next episode, but in the meantime, keep being the amazing you that you are.